Hello, everyone, and I'm going to talk about why I think altcoins are going to break out soon. The central reason is pretty straightforward. Bitcoin has gone down, and although altcoins have gone down with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin dominance has actually gone down too, and that's not typical of what happens when Bitcoin goes down. See, when Bitcoin goes down, altcoins tend to go down a higher percentage, which results in Bitcoin dominance going up. Usually that's what happens. You look at all the historical stuff, Bitcoin goes down, Bitcoin dominance goes up because altcoins go down or more in a spectacular fashion. And we have actually gone down over a significant amount of time, about 2 weeks, from about 124,000 to roughly 112,000. That's about a 10% drop, a $12,000 drop. And although alts have dropped, if you look at the Bitcoin dominance, it is a solid, essentially 58.7. Now, we did peak at about almost 65 back in basically early July, late June. And since we've actually started sliding down on the Bitcoin dominance has actually gone down as well. And it's not the Ethereum dominance has definitely gone up. The others dominance, which refers to all the other altcoins, has stayed very steady. So what's happened is Ethereum is actually gaining dominance and others are basically staying steady. What that generally means is like it generally goes like Bitcoin goes up, then Ethereum goes up, and then all the other alts go up. So Ethereum is going up. I don't think the Ethereum cycle is quite complete yet. But once it starts getting complete, I think the others cycle is definitely going to start. Now, I think Bitcoin dominance is going to go down to roughly maybe like 40% or so at the height of the bull run. So we've got a lot of time left to actually do that. But there are some things blocking us. One that's coming up right now is the Jackson Hole Symposium that is going to happen tomorrow. And that's going to block us because Jerome Powell is most likely going to be bearish more than bullish. Remember, the producer price index rose by 0.9, which is 3 times what it was expected to. And if things get more expensive for producers, it's eventually going to trickle down to consumers. So I think in his speech, he is going to be more hawkish. And he's going to look at the producer price index and say we're not ready for a cut yet. Now, the other issue is that most of the other Fed governors actually agree with him. The minutes actually just came out for the last FOMC conference, and what it showed was that the Fed governors are more afraid of what the producer price index will do for inflation over anything else. So based on that alone, there is a very good chance we don't get a rate cut in September, which, by the way, I think is already priced in. And if the chance of a rate cut does actually come down because of what he says, I think the markets will come down too. Now, I don't think alts will actually lose that much dominance, even if we've come down, because they've shown not to in the last month and a half. But the entire market will actually come down if the chance for a rate cut gets smaller and smaller. Now, if the producer price index next month goes back down to 0.2, 0.3, I think that almost solidifies a rate cut for us, as long as this consumer price index stays tight. Now, if the CPI actually rises by about 0.5 and the PPI rises like 0.4, 0.5 or more, then I think the chance of a rate cut is essentially zero. Remember, Jerome Powell doesn't really care about pleasing people because he's out like next year anyways. He's only got maybe half a year left or slightly longer than that. So he's not really concerned about retaining his position because he knows he's not really going to have a position. Trump is already interviewing about 7 to 10 people to take over his position. And former Fed chairs, former Treasury officials, and current Fed governors are all sucking up to Trump in order to try to get the position of Fed chair because it is a very lucrative position. So they're kind of already having their lobby efforts. So whichever guy he picks, they're going to do basically what he says. And that involves cutting the rates. But we might not get a rate cut until then, and the markets aren't going to price that far forward. So I will have to see what he says at the Jackson Hole Symposium. Now, the rest of the symposium has actually been pretty bullish. You know, we've got Michelle Bowman, one of the Fed governors, essentially saying that the Fed should actually be allowed to hold crypto. We've got another Fed governor saying that, like, banks should actually fully embrace cryptocurrencies and DeFi and stablecoins, and those are the future. So the rest of it's been pretty bullish. But the thing that most people care about is Jerome Powell and what he will announce for the rates. Or for like his perspective on the rates. Now, he'll probably say he's probably still data driven because that's what he always says. But hopefully he doesn't suggest that rates are going to be locked in forever because the producer price index was high. But there is a high possibility that he does that. But even if that does happen and we temporarily drop, I still think we are coiling up for October, November, December bull run. I do think like some of the Fed governors and also the presidential administration itself is pretty much determined to push the price of crypto up. Now, they are kind of hampering themselves because tariffs are definitely getting in the way. Like, for Bitcoin miners, at least, they're facing huge liabilities. So the price actually does have to push higher for them to actually combat that at this point. But the good movement in alts with respect to Bitcoin and the fact that even the non-Ethereum alts are actually holding their ratio as Bitcoin actually drops is an extremely good sign. And that only really happens when we're about to have alt season. And Ethereum is still crawling up when you compare it to Bitcoin, despite the drop. So Ethereum's already in the accumulation/growth cycle, and I think altcoins are going to follow, maybe in the next 2 weeks, but definitely in the next 2 to 3 months. So at this point, you definitely should not sell that bag at this point, maybe even buy more of a bag. If you don't have a bag, right now would actually be the time to buy, or maybe just wait until after this conference, because I do think Powell's going to be hawkish. You might be able to get like a 10-15% discount if you do that. But at that point, it will actually be time to buy before the market recovers and before we have that alt run. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.